Welcome to San Juan's Today on CNL2 TV in Friday Harbor, Washington. I'm Jeff Noedel, and with me is Heather Spaulding, editor of the Journal of the San Juan Islands. Thank you for being here, Heather.
Oh, thank you for having me.
For the next 30 minutes or so, we will be discussing some of the important and interesting news of the week, all of which and more you'll find in the new issue of the Journal of the San Juan Islands. But first, I want to stress how lucky we are to have three sound publishing newspapers covering the San Juans. The Journal of the San Juan Islands, plus the Islands Sounder, edited by Colleen Smith, plus the Islands Weekly, edited by Colleen Smith. Why are we lucky to have such thorough professional news coverage here? Because for years now, small towns in the United States have been losing their local newspapers. 2 per week are closing. Can you believe that, Heather? 2 per week, and it's been going on for years now. Many of these news franchises go back 100, even 150 years. And studies have shown when towns and neighborhoods lose their real newspapers with professional reporters, corruption and incompetence in local government starts to rise. It's called the Fourth Estate for a reason. Professional journalists ask the questions and bring the spotlight on government, and government works better because of it. So buy a paper today, or better yet, subscribe to the paper version or the digital version. The digital version is just $5.95 for 4 weeks, right?
That's right.
Total
That's right.
bargain, total bargain. And it's your cheapest insurance policy to keep your government working for you. What else can you do to keep these three papers strong? Advertise. Advertise your job openings, your garage sales, your cars for sale. If you own a business or you're friends with a business owner, advertising is the lifeblood of a paper. What's in it for you? Well, every paper has something called a news hole, obnoxious, but true. And this is the number of column inches that are devoted to the news in every paper. The rest has to be advertising, right?
That's
Am I
right.
right? So it's a ratio thing, it's a percentage thing. And when there is advertising, when there's more advertising, then there's more news.
Yep.
So if you want to see more pages of the paper, that will automatically happen if the community advertises more with these three great papers. So Heather, CNL2 is a new outlet, a new TV outlet here in town. And no doubt we'll have some new viewers who don't know as much about the papers or you. So why don't we start by talking about who you are? I think you're virtually a lifelong resident.
Pretty much, yeah. We moved here when I was 6 and loved it as a kid. And then, of course, I did the usual high school teenager, there's not enough to do here. Can't wait to move away. So I moved away, went to college, but immediately I knew I was going to move back. This is my home. So here I am. Love to write. So I found myself with the paper and just happy to be editor and happy to be trying to tell people's stories here on the island, trying to keep people abreast of what's going on. And there's a lot going on right now. So here we are.
What we're going to do with this program is we're going to talk about, this is Tuesday afternoon, and we're going to be talking about some of the stories that are coming out. In fact, the paper begins to circulate on Tuesday, is that right?
It does, yeah.
Okay.
Definitely hits the store by Wednesday, although it is always dated on Wednesday.
So we will get into a few of the stories, kind of the rest of the story, maybe some of the challenges sometimes that it was to get the story, maybe some of the unanswered questions or the progress, because, you know, all of these stories are never done.
Right.
And if Heather likes this and ever agrees to do it again, ever, we would be adding calls and comments from you, the viewers, in real time. So this particular first episode is recorded, but in the future they would be live. And if you were so gracious as to ever want to do this again, we'll see how this next 20 minutes goes. Then we would want to involve the viewers with their questions and input. And you're brave. You've done this for a while. You can take
I can
you
take a
take tough
hit.
questions and you take a hit. Okay. So today I think we're going to talk mostly about a great set of interviews you did for Port Commission candidates. Why don't you just set that up for us and tell us about that story?
Sure. I wanted to do this because I think the port is really important part of this community that we don't talk a lot about. Kind of gets put under the radar a little bit, and it hasn't had a whole lot of controversial stuff happening, which is why it gets put under the radar. But it is really important. As one of the candidates, Greg Hertel, pointed out, its budget is about twice the amount of the town. So I just think that it's important that the people know who's running for this position. There are 3 commissioners total. So this just fills one of the positions, and I think both of the candidates had some great things to say and interesting perspectives and ideas about what the port is gonna face coming down the road.
The paper does not endorse.
The paper does not endorse. It used to in the past, and maybe that's something that we can look at in the future. But right now, we're not endorsing anybody.
So, Heather, you shared with me I guess the galley before a couple days before this published. So I've had the benefit of reading the story that you can read today, tomorrow. And so some of my impressions were that it's really interesting how the Port Commission touches so much of the life here. It's not just about boats and planes. It's so much more economic development, tourism, some of the biggest housing, some of the biggest environment. You touched on all of those in your interview. Do you think everybody understands how big a job this is? How important this is?
I don't think they do. I don't think that the community does, because we haven't really talked about it. Issues will come up here and there, and as is typical of news, people don't really pay attention to it until there's a fire. Oh, now let's take a look now that there's this crisis happening. So I think it's good to shine a light on some things that are coming up and the things that they do, as you just said, that fall under their purview that people might not know about.
So one of the subjects that came up in your interviews was what the Port Commission is doing in terms of the environment. What are some of the issues in that category?
There are a couple. One of them is greenhouse gases. Boats and planes both contribute to that. So I was really interested in some of the developing technology in boats and planes. What's happening in both those realms that can improve the environment, cut back on greenhouse gases, and then also the port has been really instrumental going way back and getting automotive charging stations on their properties, which I think is really interesting. So they've kind of had a heads up on this for a while, and that goes back to the commissioners way back who've kind of had their eye on the prize. The other thing is, of course, sea level rise and the effects that that's going to have on their marine properties. Interestingly enough, Greg Hertel brought up the point that sea level rise isn't going to be too terribly huge here, or it shouldn't be. And part of that is because of the way, now hopefully I'm explaining this the way he explained it, but my understanding is part of that is the way that the geology of the islands and the tectonic plates around us are actually pushing up. So we're going up while sea level rise is going up. So that's going to help offset that. I hope I got that right. But that's kind of
That's
in
good.
a nutshell.
That's good news, right?
Yeah, that's good news. And then, as Rich Goodhart pointed out, too, the port is also sort of building up land, which is called a lift, in some of those marine areas. So, and that's going to happen slowly over time. That's something that, again, the port is already on. They're thinking about it.
Is economic development a mandate of the commission?
It's a mandate of the ports.
I'm sorry,
for sure.
The Port Commission.
Yeah. They were founded to help bring boaters into the town to support island businesses. And that's generally what ports do. They have a very large economic role to help support businesses in the area. So, yeah, anything that they can do to help our local small businesses is definitely falls under their mandate.
There's always in every port town and really in the whole Northwest, I guess, there's this push and pull between tourism and more tourism and less tourism. Mm-hmm. Is the port pulled into that as well?
It definitely could be. I haven't heard a lot coming out of the current port commissions and commissioners, and not Greg Hertel, Rich Goodhart touched on that a little bit. Talking about that is one of the challenges he sees with the port is what direction the port is going to move in, and how can we meet that balance of making sure that the residents are okay, their quality of life maintains the same quality of life, and still have tourists come in.
And lastly, there was some discussion by both candidates about land use in, I guess, part of the airport area that could be developed somewhat. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, there are some lots around the airport that can be developed. There's some FAA regulations around that, of course. So one of those regulations, and this is where like they can't help out with affordable housing in those areas too much because the FAA doesn't allow long-term residential stuff. But there are some things that they could do to help small businesses. They can have, very low buildings. They can have they can lease to different contractors to store their equipment. They can, have those kind of businesses there. I'm trying to think of some other businesses that would be sort of low impact. And I guess some people have been calling for like maybe having agriculture in there, which might work.
Storage, a lot of mention of storage.
A lot of mention of storage,
yeah.
Which they already do with plane equipment, so...
Well, it's a great piece, and it's there's a lot of content there. If you're interested in making the most informed possible decision on that particular vote, I would strongly encourage you to get this week's paper. Very well done.
Thank you.
Very well
Thank
done.
you very much.
Yeah.
And thanks again for having me.
Well, we got more to talk about. Don't leave yet. Hold on.
Oh.
So I think a lot of people's favorite in the paper is the sheriff's blotter.
Indeed.
There's just such a grab bag of really serious things and sometimes almost whimsical things and sometimes touching things. So what would you say this week is the most important?
Well, one of the things that struck me, and if you are an avid reader of the Sheriff's Log, which I think most of us are, October 6th, there was a domestic violence report. One of the parties was arrested for domestic assault in the 4th degree. I think paying attention to those is hugely important, and I want to flag out that October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So it's a good time to talk about that. It clearly happens and happens more than we want to think about in this community. It happens to all ages, all financial brackets. It is not no one is not susceptible to it. both genders too, by the way. So it's a huge issue, and anyone who wants to learn more, check out Safe San Juan's website. They have a lot of preemptive information, and you can report if there's anyone that you're worried about it, or if you are experiencing it yourself. You can reach out to Safe San Juan's. They have a lot of resources for you.
And what's your favorite? What's the most interesting in this week's?
Oh, I don't know if I have a favorite. They weren't as whimsical this week as they sometimes can be. But one of the ones that struck me was somebody reporting that there was a lot of dogs barking. And the reason why that struck me is because it shows how much this community cares about animals. And sometimes it might be over the top, but sometimes it's important and highly necessary. I mean, you see it on Facebook all the time. People reporting, taking a picture of a dog wandering down the street. Whose dog is this? We're very concerned about our animals, and that is a good thing. And I love that about this community.
Do you spend a lot of time on Facebook?
Not a lot, but some. I'm one of those people that doesn't post a lot unless it's for the journal. I scroll through it.
Or you wait for somebody to tell you
look
need
at this.
Go look at Facebook right away.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you. I hope this wasn't, it's no Novocaine, but hopefully it wasn't quite as bad as pulling teeth. But
Definitely not. No, I had fun.
And if anybody out there would like to see Heather do this again, let her know.
Absolutely.
So that's just a small sample of some of the great original professional reporting by Sound Publishing staff. So please support these fine newspapers with your subscriptions and your advertising dollars. They're really good stuff, really high quality. Look at all this. Look at all these pages. So much stuff, and ads and all the stuff that falls out. That's good too. That's fun. And so thanks. Thank you very much. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
And have a great day.